Hello, welcome to Financial Insider Weekly. I'm your host, Michael Gray, CPA. My guest today is Dick Blakely. Dick is the Chief Executive Officer of the Blakely Group. The Blakely Group is a portfolio and wealth management firm located in Santa Clara. Dick has been in the business of advising clients in excess of 35 years. The Blakely Group's mission statement is to be good investors and to help clients have better control over their finances. And I've mentioned Dick and I have known each other for many, many years, and I really highly respect him as a financial advisor, so I'm very pleased to have him as a guest today. So today, Dick and I are going to be talking about a little bit different subject than I often have with the financial advisors. We're going to be talking about financial elder abuse and how family meetings can help in dealing with that problem. So related to this is a legal area. Dick and I are not lawyers, and so we think that you should consult with a lawyer and actually with a team of professionals to help you with this area. But we want to just sort of alert you to this problem and give you some things to think about. Dick, thanks again for being with me today. And so to get started, why don't you frame the problem a little bit for us?
Sure. Well, thank you, Michael. I'm glad to be able to talk about this. This is an issue that is framed, and in California, elder is considered to be 65 and older. Mm-hmm. And in the state of California, there's about 5.96 million cases outstanding, as I understand it, with regarding elder abuse. That is expected to grow by 2020 to 7.12 million cases outstanding. Of that, 12.3% is considered financial elder abuse. Now, to frame this better, 67% are women, and 77.9, or basically 78%, has to do with men and financial and elder abuse. Now, when I put that with a national survey that said 3 in 5 seniors would prefer death above running out of money, this says this is a serious problem.
Right. So those are really large numbers, of course. Why don't you give us some examples of elder abuse?
Okay. Well, let me do 3 cases, and first of all, let me say these are based on news because I can't give client information out, but the things that I've read about plus things I've seen over a 35-year career. And let me also sort of paraphrase and add a little bit of what Justice Stuart Potter says is, I don't always know it, but I know it when I see it. Mm-hmm. So with that, let me go over the first case. Mm-hmm. The first case is an elderly man who's having memory problem, he's having mobility problem, and he's losing and has lost all of his business acumen. He has 2 daughters. He hasn't been close to either one of them in reality, but he decides he will move in with one of the daughters. The daughter takes care of all the bills, pays the rent, pays for food, and over time, her mandate seems to grow in her own mind to include vacations and ultimately helping her set up a new business. Case number 2 was an elderly gentleman who passes away. This is his 3rd marriage. The other 2 previous wives had also died. So he has some family. The wife is very much grieving, and in great shock because she's never been in this position before. So she builds her team. Her team is her grandnephew, her attorney, and her financial advisor. One day, the financial advisor gets a letter that says, okay, let's send some money to the two stepsons. And geez, and while you're at it, send money to my grandnephew. That's about 4 times larger than the combined amount to the two stepsons. And then case number 3 we'll deal with a gentleman who had been very successful. He had gone to Ivy League schools, graduated top of his class. He was very high in his MBA class. He had started a number of VC-backed ventures and was very successful. And he now has problems with health, and that also caused other cognitive problems. And so one day he sends to his financial advisor, send a lot of money through an intermediary to a foreign country for an investment.
Oh my gosh.
He actually calls his daughter and says, I think you should put some money in this too. And she becomes very, very much concerned on her father's behalf.
Right. Okay, well, maybe we can talk about these in a little more detail about what was going on and how the problem could have been prevented.
Yeah, so what we could have done is the first thing that went wrong in the first case. This is the elderly man who moves in with his daughter. And there's a number of things that went wrong. First of all, he did not have the mental capability of actually forming the intent and thinking through what the next 2-3 steps would be. Number 2 is the daughter had no one to look out over her shoulder and making sure what her father should have been wanting, his best interest would be looking after. And number 3 was over time, what had happened is the daughter that was the carekeeper, she got to where it became where she felt entitled to her father's money.
Right.
So how could this be corrected? Well, the financial advisor called because he could not share the information,
Yes.
all the information, but spoke with the other sister, and said, your father's memory is failing, and it would be probably good is to help assist your sister a little bit in helping to understand because that's such a big job. So, how could this have been prevented? If the gentleman would have had a family meeting in advance and they talk about family governance and the family finances and set up a good way for there to be checks and balances, I think that would have helped them out a lot.
Right. So one of the issues related to this, this isn't in your outline, but is what is the capability of the people that you have here? And so maybe as we get into the details about what should be involved in a family meeting, but it may mean that you need to get other people to come to the party. Anyway, so let's move on a little bit then and talk a little bit about case 2. About what do you think about that?
Well, case number 2 was a very interesting case to be looking into. In this case, the gentleman had not set up something where the family that was there. So the wife was doing everything that she thought she should be doing. She was grieving. She was panicked because she had never been in that situation before. So what should have been to happen is to put something together to actually have it to where it would go on a process after he's there. So how was it corrected? Here again, the financial advisor, when he got the letter, it was a notarized letter, that should send the little antenna up saying you don't need it to be notarized. So obviously something was up. He called the wife and said, is this really what your intent is? And the wife said, I'm just don't know. I'm so afraid, this, that, and the other. And so the advisor said, would you like for some help to be made with this? Have you thought about talking to your successor trustee? In this case, the two stepsons. And then she said, oh, I just love someone else to make the decision for me. And so the advisor called the two stepsons, and they flew in from out of state, and they took over as successor trustees. And so how could have this been done? Prevention is always so much cheaper, is for the gentleman to have had his meetings with the team and brought them all together. In this case, it should have been the attorney. It should have been the two stepsons. It should have been the accountant, and it should have been the advisor, along with the wife, and set up the process in advance.
Yeah. It may have been too that if they had thought through the situation a little better, that the conclusion would have been that the wife shouldn't have been a trustee in the first place.
That might have been.
It was putting her in a position that she just wasn't really capable of handling, and so that was sort of a sad situation. Why don't you talk a little bit more about this case number 3, though? In a sense, that sounds like the most interesting. Certainly, that it involved the most dollars.
It was. Well, all of them was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Okay.
So that's why prevention is so much cheaper. In the third case, the gentleman had physical maladies. And as he developed those physical maladies, he also developed great fear, and because of his pride, said, I have to be right. So it continued down that path. Because he had been top of his class, he had done all the right things always along the way, his family felt all the way up to the end that he would make right decisions. But as the physical maladies, he started having more anger outbursts. He started having other problems. Ultimately, what happened was when the daughter got the call, she came down, spent a weekend with him. And at that point, she started to understand what his problems were. And she began to work on this. I will tell you, not everything can be corrected. In this case, he had put over $500,000 into this, quote, foreign investment that he probably will never see a dime out of. And how could it have been corrected? There again, a good family meeting. He brings in his daughter, his stepson, his cousin, his accountant, his attorney, his advisors, and works with him. In this case, it could have been a lot more than $500,000 if the daughter had stepped in.
Okay. So, in this particular case, part of what we're talking about is that there needed to be more due diligence related to what this person was involved with. And in the past, he was capable of doing that himself, but now he was in a vulnerable position.
That is absolutely correct. In a family, when one sets a family meeting, and we only do family meetings for our clients, but we do have a paper if you want that says it's a family meeting right for you, and you can take that and you can organize your own family meeting. But we do this for our clients. But in there, what you do is it allows for the rigor and the collective, if you would, team to help vet the investment opportunity, or in this case, what's probably was a scam, and say, would a rational person make that kind of an investment over time and put in up to $500,000?
Okay, so why don't you detail out a little bit to us about, what is a family meeting and so forth?
Yeah, a family meeting is 2 or more generations meeting together, and it can be with or without their financial team, and with the purpose of working together to see that the family's legacy, which is the values of the family, will have legs, if you would, on them. A lot of times they'll have mutual goals, and as a result, it's their own enlightened self-interest, if you would, to see that the family traditions continue to go over time.
Okay. So I've actually been involved in sort of running some of these myself. And also, I think a big thing related to this is really communication. And so, because some family members are going to be more willing to be involved, on a more active basis than others. Or again, you may bring somebody else. So in my particular case, I brought in an independent trustee. But by having this communication of what was going on, it created a comfort level for the entire family, at least that they knew that, in this particular case, mom was being taken care of, and that, the family's assets were being properly handled and so forth. So what are some of the things that are typically discussed in the family meeting?
Well, there are a lot of things that can be. Excuse me. But one of them happens to be is a family. What is the family values about? I had a discussion this morning with a client. His daughters are just getting married. The first one was just married 2 weeks ago. And so the discussion ended up is, well, her husband is becoming an RN, registered nurse, but he'd actually like to possibly become a doctor, and he's choosing to become a registered nurse only from a financial standpoint. Well, the family values says education is very important. And so the discussion on their family meeting will be well, how can we help finance the new son-in-law, that if his real life wish is to become a doctor, how do we support him and our daughter and hopefully our future grandchildren into being successful in doing something like this? The other child would like to set up a company business. So how does that fit? Well, we also want the family members to be self-reliant. So what is the responsibility to support one another in helping one child, her husband, become a doctor, the other child to become a business person?
Okay, so that's the values meetings.
Then the governance. Okay, governance is very important. So who's going to be helping look after finances? This is how you avoid elder abuse from a financial scams in any way, because you now have an orderly way to vet your professionals and your investments. So what you want to make sure is that you're hiring the right people. So governance says, are we going to use, what kind of an attorney do we need to add to the team because our attorney doesn't have the skills in, say, a 1031, or do we need additional team members to make this successful? And then the next thing is we also need to convey an education. Education in a number of ways. Education is, first, what does the family own? What is the instruments that it has? Does the family have a family limited partnership? What does that mean? What does that mean? Because in light of that famous case of Strani, are we doing things right to where it will maintain all of our tax statuses? So education. But it might be for the younger members of the family is, what is a FICO score? Why does my credit rating really count? I find that those kind of discussions many times are not held inside of a family.
Okay. Does a family need to be like super wealthy in order to have family meetings and to benefit from one?
What I find is more family of modest wealth believe that to be so, that is really true. Mere mortals, us mere mortals, we can afford to have something like a family meeting or a family meeting, it's more important is to organize it right, bringing the family together, having an agenda, taking good notes, sharing the notes with everybody, having rules of engagement so that if you do disagree, you can disagree honestly and openly and without feeling that you're going to be trampled on. And you need to decide who's going to be in that meeting. Are your daughter-in-law or son-in-law, should they be in there? Should your accountant, should your attorney, should your advisor be in there or not? So what we're looking for is to improve the total quality of the advice for the family.
Okay. How often do you think that these meetings should take place?
Usually, I recommend that once we start a family meeting, is to keep it as a tradition. It should be an annual meeting, and there may need to be additional meetings throughout the year. But now, with technology as it being today, we can have either Skype meetings or GoToMeetings, and that would allow us to look at the documents at the same time and to be able to see each other face to face, even though not in the same room. But I just strongly recommend that we have an annual meeting with everyone getting together so that we can build some tradition for the family as well as just talking about business and finance. I also encourage is make sure, if at all possible, grandchildren are there and make sure there's some fun because the grandchildren don't want to hear the old folks just talk about business and law and what's going to be transferred.
Well, okay. So when you're working with families on organizing these meetings, how do you go about it, and what sort of investment is involved for them to do this process?
Investment can be as small as a couple $100, but it can be as big as the family's budget allows. I have a family that we meet annually up in Squaw Valley, and I fly up and join them for their meeting. But the biggest thing is the time in advance to have the meeting, to make sure everybody knows the rules, to make sure that everyone's invited and that they're confirmed. And it can be are there enough rooms in the house? Are there enough sleeping bags if there's, or where else can they go to spend the weekend?
Okay. So maybe you can share with us a little bit of one or two experiences that you've had with having family meetings with clients and what sort of results that they've had.
Sure. Must say that the experiences have all been very positive. Sometimes they're tearful, but usually in the end, everyone understands that they have got more out of them than the time they've invested in them. So one of them ends up being their daughter had just made it through the 4th month of pregnancy, and we began to now have to morph the meeting into planning on the next generation. I've also seen family meetings that are a little more tearful, in which all of a sudden someone had finally told them that they had stage 3 cancer, and they hadn't told their parents. They were waiting for the meeting so they could tell the entire family together.
Ouch.
So it can be both sides, both the sweet and the bitter at the same time. But by and large, whenever they understand that they are part of something larger than themselves, their family, that there's someone that they can feel comfortable around, that they can trust, that knows them when they're not good and knows them when they've achieved a lot of accomplishments. That safety is what makes a family meeting usually very positive for the entire family.
Now, you said that you have a little guide
Yes.
for putting one of these meetings together. Is it available at your website, or how would people get it?
Just call our office. We haven't hung it on our website yet. We will probably within the next month or so. But it's something that we developed proprietary over a lot of years, but it's nothing that big. They're basically practical things. Find a good place that is neutral. Do you invite all the son-in-laws? Do you the daughter-in-laws? You set the rules of engagement. You do all those things before you actually send out the invitation, because if some families, it may be a little more loaded than others, but you do want the family to participate. That is what allows fewer lawsuits, fewer bad feelings, and that you can actually find what was good back in the quote old days.
Okay. So we're getting close to being out of time here. So maybe you'd like to throw out some final thoughts here as we wrap this thing up.
Yeah, I would strongly suggest families have meetings, and because none of us by our birthright know what the other person is thinking. Let's share it while we're alive. Let's transfer those traditions, the good, the bad, and if there's some bad feelings, while you're alive, that's the time to repair them. It's impossible once you're gone.
Okay, Dick. So I think you've given us a lot to think about. I really appreciate, one, you bringing the issue up related to financial elder abuse, because it's something, for all of us to be aware and alert for. When you're meeting with an elder parent or friend or whatever, just to be alert for what's going on with them a little bit, and maybe that you have to let some other authorities even know what's going on. And there are legal requirements for some groups, as I understand, for bankers and lawyers and some health professionals, for doing that. But then the family meeting is another context that again, we can be alert for what's going on within the family, and hopefully to take some action if something seems amiss. Folks, I hope that we've given you something to think about, and that you'll do something about it. Have a family meeting. We'll see you. Oh, well, first, Dick, thank you again for being a guest on our show. See you next time on Financial Insider Weekly.